Okay, we're back again, and today this is a very special interview because if you don't know by now, I love truck drivers and I love the trucking industry, and our company serves the trucking industry, and it's very important to me to give the drivers a voice, to give them a platform, to learn about their lives, to learn about things that people can do to appreciate them. And today I get the opportunity to interview my daddy. And, it's, I'm gonna try not to get emotional. My love for trucking started with this man. And, I had this concept for the things that I just said, which is give the driver a voice. So I bought this domain, voiceofthedriver.com, and I started interviewing drivers just because I like to talk to drivers. And this is like the interview of all interviews. So let's get started. So today I have with me my daddy and my mama. So why don't we start with your name?
William Ray Saunders.
Also known as?
Hound Dog.
Hound Dog. So that's your CB handle.
That's my CB
Hound Dog. And we also have?
Brenda Gale Saunders.
Brenda Gale Saunders and Ray Saunders. Wow, this is really surreal. Like, I've been on podcasts before, but I've never really interviewed someone like this other than drivers on Zoom. So this is a first. So to kind of really take this thing from the top, you're the reason why we're here.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, we're in the mobility business, and we can choose to pursue any type of business, any kind of market that we want, but trucking is what I choose.
Right.
To focus on. Look at me. I'm wearing a Cat Diesel power shirt.
Right.
And some Ariat boots and a Kenworth belt buckle. So, trucking is something that I choose. And, it really started from all those memories of being a kid, in that GMC Astro.
Yep.
So, really, you've enabled me to build a business and to, see some of the people that work here really achieve their dreams. Like Rico in the last year, who works here, got his dream car and bought his first house.
Amen.
Right. So
Good.
You played a part in that.
Yeah.
So it goes far beyond the sacrifices you made for the family and driving that truck. Typically whenever I interview drivers, I've got the questions memorized, but this is a special interview. So y'all, I got a lot of questions to ask.
I see you have.
So, I'll start with a big old thank you for, it was tough. I know, me growing up without you there for that chunk of my childhood. Mama's already started. And you being away from us, but I'll tell you, you can look at things a couple different ways. You can look at things as happening to you, or you can look at things as happening for you. And the way I look at it is, although that was difficult for all of us, it's happened for me, and it's really going to happen for a lot of drivers because, our mission is to make drivers' lives better on the road.
Right.
Because they're so often overlooked.
Exactly.
They're underappreciated. Exactly. And the sacrifice that they make, which you made, and I was that sacrifice, and I'm not upset about it. I'm not like, I've thought, man, with my life, had I been a little different if you had been around and grown up, but you did what you had to do. So many other drivers modern day do these things, and they don't see their kids for a couple weeks at a time. Right. And their wife, and women drivers as well, but their wife, their husband, their spouse, They're at home making it happen.
Right.
So, what I want to do is give these drivers a platform,
Okay.
get their voices heard,
That's wonderful.
bring awareness to the fact that because they don't see their family,
Right.
but every couple of weeks, we can easily walk down the aisle at Walmart
Right.
and grab a jar of peanut butter,
Absolutely.
right? Without them and without y'all, that wouldn't happen. I put out a video a couple of weeks ago, and, sometimes God speaks to me. We all know that God doesn't actually speak to you, but you get a tug, you get a push, you get a pull, you get a feeling, you got to act on it. And so I was just sitting there thinking, I'm just like, man, look around you. I mean, you look around here, every single thing in this conference room made it here on a truck.
Exactly.
That's right.
And one of the things I said in the video was, if you're in your car, look around you. You are driving your car because a trucker put the gas in the tank at the gas station, which made it in your car.
That's right.
And that driver spent time away from their family. And that's the biggest thing
Yeah.
that I want to highlight for everybody to see. It's like, listen, these drivers, they cut people, we cut them off. I don't cut them off, but, the public cuts them off, and they get frustrated whenever they're having to come up to speed, and it takes a while. But because of these drivers, we can live our lives.
That's right.
So that's the foundation of what I'm trying to build here. So yeah, let's get started. And another thing before we get started is, there's somebody that's not with us that played just an equal role,
Right.
Yep.
and that's Popeye Jim.
Yep.
Yep.
I remember hearing my first, what I think is, this whole Jake brake thing is my obsession with Jake brakes came from being in that Kenworth K100 and being able to flip the switch and
Switch, yeah.
feel the truck rattle and
Yeah.
jerk back and hear the big noise and everything. And that's just stuck with me for years. So yeah, all I ever wanted to be was a driver. And I remember a conversation that we had. You remember this, Mama. I used to get in trouble for drawing trucks in class.
Yeah.
One time in third grade, Miss Caldwell, I remember my teacher, put me in the hallway, put my desk in the hallway, because I drew trucks so much.
Yeah.
So all I ever wanted to be was a driver, and then you came home right around middle school. That's whenever you came off the road and you started driving for Prestige.
Right.
And you knew that I got in trouble for drawing trucks. I obsessed about trucks. I pushed them around the house, the Golden Eagle Express truck.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you said to me, I know that you want to drive trucks, but that's not the life for you. I don't want you to drive trucks, and I don't want you to work with your hands.
Look at you now.
Those are the two things that, Bradley ended up driving.
Yeah.
And we got all our cousins and everybody we know ends up driving. But, really, that's the reason why I didn't drive trucks, So when the ELD mandate came in 2016, and, I've been in the mobile business,
Right.
I was like, man, this is an opportunity for me to go into an industry that I always wanted to be a part of.
Right.
Right.
So that's how I ended up here. So,
And we're so thankful that you are here.
this is really surreal. So, tell me how you got started driving a truck.
Well, I was working with a company called Cumberland Paving Company. I was a paver operator. Hottest job I ever had. I've had some hot jobs. That was the hottest job I ever had. Well, when we moved from job to job, to have the equipment trailer, would have to get the paver and load it, and I would have to go with it so I could load it and unload it. Well, the driver of the equipment trailer was JD, was his name, JD Williams, and it was a white, I think it was 13-speed, 290, and we left the job one day, and I was riding with him because I had to ride with him. I told him, I said, I want you to show me how to do this. And I kept looking at him, and we moved the trucks. Moved the equipment. And when we got to the place to unload, we had to go back. When we got unloaded, he says, you gonna try it? I said, yeah. And I got over there and I started changing gears a little bit. That's where I learned, right there. He showed me how to do it, and it just went from there. I was 20 and a half years old. And then when I turned 21, I got my, what they called chauffeur license, is what they were called.
And how much training did you have to go through to get your chauffeur license?
I didn't have none.
I know, it wasn't much, was it? Nowadays, you got to go.
It was just different questions.
Right.
Then it was different questions. It's a whole different ballgame now.
Now you got to go through 5 weeks of classroom training. I may be wrong, but I think it's 5 weeks of classroom training plus the road training, and then you can get your CDLs. And don't get me wrong, that's probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, yeah.
But back then, it was just different. I mean, people didn't wear over-the-shoulder safety belts. You only had lap belts. You never wore that. Safety was just different back then. But also, you had a foundation of working on the farm. So you had driven a lot of equipment through your teenage years, just like me. I mean, at 10 years old, I was in the tobacco field driving a tractor. So I got to drive ton trucks, tractors, all of that stuff. And you went through that same upbringing.
Right.
So it was pretty natural to you, right?
Natural, yes, yes. And then when I got in the truck and he showed me how to change the gears, and I used the clutch every time. Just do the clutch. He says, do it without it. You got to learn how to do it, and it just comes natural after a while.
Yeah,
it just comes natural.
Well, I am not a truck driver, but I did get an opportunity when we both worked at Prestige.
Yeah,
and I got an opportunity to when I worked in maintenance to go out and get the trucks. And it was in Mac-R models. Mm-hmm. And I used to drive them, pull them through the maintenance shop for us to work on the feed trailers or what have you. And I figured that out. They call it rev match, where you got to get your RPMs just right so you can float the gears right into the next one. Right. Well, let me ask you. So you had that experience, right, of moving the equipment, and you learned how, but what was next after that? Like, what inspired you to go in to actually driving a truck as a truck driver?
That was, I had a job opportunity to drive a truck with Quinn Wholesale.
Okay.
And that was just driving a truck, and I just wanted to. And so I got my license. And I went to work with Quinn Wholesale. My first job with them was, they delivered groceries, but my job was the bread route.
Okay.
And you worked 2.5 days a week, really, is all you worked. What you would consider 2.5 days, because you would go to work at 12 o'clock at lunchtime. You would get off the next morning about 8 o'clock. With your bread route. You'd run all night long delivering bread to grocery stores.
Now, what kind of truck was that? Was it a tractor trailer?
It was a single axle.
It was like a bread truck that you see, like the Hostess truck and the Merida bread trucks and that type stuff.
It was it wasn't 18 wheeler because it was a single axle truck to be able to maneuver around these grocery stores back then.
I didn't even know this. I'm going to learn so much that I didn't even know. So that must have been
That was my
easy transition from learning how to drive that white and pulling that equipment around
Right.
with Cumberland Paving Company, which, by the way, they became Barnhill.
Barnhill.
You know, and there's a Barnhill
Barnhill,
plant right
right.
across the street.
That's their home office right
Yeah,
there.
it is. It's right across the
Yeah.
street. So you delivered bread to grocery stores, all right, and then, you know, where did you? What was your next job after that?
Can I make a comment in
please.
there? Okay.
And by the way, I want you to jump in anytime you want to. There are no rules in this here.
All right,
interview.
that's good. Well, he said that he basically worked 2.5 days a week, but what he didn't say was what he did in the time that he was not running his bread route. He was helping a good friend farm. So he would get off the bread truck and he would go, and whatever Sherwood Fire had for him to do that day or needed him to do, no matter what it was, he was with him.
yeah.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Yeah, you helped him a little
And
bit.
I think the whole family's floated through that farm at some point or other. Well, you're now. I mean, you still do that today. Now that you're retired,
I
don't
help
you help
him-
every
yeah,
now and
help
then?
him out a little bit.
Hey, that's something to go back to. You're retired, and it's kind of like your last job. Let's call it right.
Right.
But like. You've been helping him since the
All
beginning,
these years.
off and on throughout the
on,
years.
So
Yep.
listen, this has been about, okay, it's been probably 50 some years. We've been about to have our 49th anniversary. So he's helped them off and on anytime that he needed that he could help him, that he was not working for all of those 49 years.
So all these years, you've either been on a truck or a tractor.
On a truck or a tractor. Yep.
You know, and I was talking with somebody a couple of days ago, actually Justin Myers, the guy with the long beard. Did you ever see in that
I
interview?
saw that, yes.
We were just talking about the similarities in the people and some of the equipment in agriculture and trucking.
Right.
They're almost intertwined. The
Really?
culture, the people, the long hours, the experiences. And really, I mean, you look at it like I love trucking, but I also grew up running equipment on the farm.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, so where did you go from there? So you went Quinn Wholesale,
Right.
and then where did
Then
you
I
end
went-
up going next?
Well, that was when your grandfather had a heart attack, and he was driving for Cook and Tart Steel in Clinton, North Carolina. And he told me that he wasn't going to get back on that truck. He says, I'm not going to be able to do it. And he said, if you want it, you go talk to him. He says, I've already talked to him. And that's where I went. I went to Cook and Tart Steel and started driving that steel truck. Hauling steel out of Darlington, South Carolina. And the shop there at Cook's, we'd load up and we'd have little drops and everything. But this was back when speed limit was 55 mile an hour, interstate, wherever. That was the most you were supposed to drive.
Now, how often did you drive more than 55?
All the time.
Now, I remember that. I remember an experience that we had. So I do remember that. So I want to tell you something. You're famous.
Oh my.
You and Papa.
Oh, my.
Because in all of my presentations, including the ones that I've done on stage, I talk about my history and I talk about some of the things that we've talked about here, how trucking shaped me. And one of my slides, my pages in my presentation is why we do it.
Right.
And there's a picture of a woman driver, a man driver, 3 truck drivers, and then the bottom right-hand corner is that picture of you and Papa, and you have a shirt on that says Cook and Tart
Yeah.
Steel, and y'all sitting on the piano.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that picture is in there, and it's been in front of thousands of people. So he passed the torch,
Yes.
and so that was the first time you got on the road,
right.
From moving equipment to delivering bread to now you're on the road.
Right.
And so you're delivering steel, and you're up and down. Like, how far out did you go? Like, you came from Darlington, South Carolina. We know we started in Clinton, Darlington, South Carolina. Then where were some of the destinations that you went?
Most of the destinations that I went to was Fort Payne, Alabama. Was my we would run 3 to 4 trips a week from Darlington to Fort Payne, Alabama, because they built these trusses. They go on. That was when the building industry with the trusses and everything was strong, and we delivered steel to them, and that was our main route. We did go to Texas. They had Nucor had a mill down there, and we went to Texas and come back with them. And about Baltimore was the most north. I didn't like going north that much.
I don't know very many truckers who do like to go north. It gets pretty hairy after you get past Richmond.
Yeah, it was.
With that traffic, you think you're going to be there in 4 hours, it could be 8.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even just driving a regular car, you just don't even know.
Well, when we went up there, we'd leave at 11 o'clock at night, so we wouldn't have to hit all that traffic. So we'd leave a little bit earlier. That way we're going around D.C. about 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
Right.
Where we bypass all that traffic.
Well, I mean, they still do that today.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I worked, I've done a lot of jobs prior to finding my God-given talent. One of them was working third shift at the glass plant. Y'all remember that?
Yeah, remember that.
That's not an easy job.
And I worked at a glass plant one time also.
So did Uncle Danny.
Yeah.
I think Wesley did too.
Yeah.
Where we're from, there ain't a whole lot to do. You're driving a truck, working at a factory, or you're working on a farm.
That's
about it.
Back then, that's exactly what it was.
So it's just that foundation of those types of occupations have always been there.
Right.
So let me ask you, I don't remember. I went out with you a few times.
Yeah, you went. We went with me. Yeah.
I remember Birmingham. So is what is that place in Alabama?
Fort Payne.
Fort Payne. Is that near Birmingham?
Yes. Fort Payne is north of Birmingham. It's more of a northern town. That's where the singing group Alabama. That's where they originated.
Oh,
that's where
that's
most
their
of them
home.
are from.
Let me tell you.
All of them are from there except the drummer. I think the drummer wasn't from there.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Lord, I remember the Alabama 8-track.
Yeah.
8-track. Yeah. They're not even like, what is it? It's just an 8-track. I remember y'all having Alabama 8-tracks and records.
Yeah.
And what's
the
interesting
vinyls.
as I've come to kind of find myself in this phase of my life, I've listened to a lot of Alabama here lately because it was instilled in me.
Because you heard it a lot.
I did.
When your daddy was gone, I played it a lot.
So I remember going out and, when you're super young, like whenever I was, and Bradley didn't get to do a whole lot of that stuff, but, he eventually ended up driving, a truck. But I remember Birmingham was like talked about a lot. Like, we're going to Birmingham or something like that. I can't remember everything, but, as a kid, you remember the experiences more than you do the detail.
Right.
But that's cool. I didn't know that they all came from that city, and you were in and out of that quite a bit. Is that why you liked Alabama so much?
I guess so.
The group?
Evidently so. I did enjoy it. Yeah.
But, I remember that truck, and I started down this path before we got off track. I remember one experience. We were all in the truck, and you were driving in to Cook and Tart Steel, and we saw the blue lights. Do you remember getting pulled over with us? Because remember, you don't remember the details, but I remember the experiences. Do you remember getting pulled over right as you were pulling into Cook and Tart Steel?
No, it's not coming to me, but I got pulled over a lot.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Well,
why are some of the reasons you got pulled over?
Because I just couldn't learn how to drive 55.
You think that's because you had a Chevelle and you used to run it hard?
Yes, that's probably it. That's probably it. But when your speed limit was 55 on the interstate, and it was hard to do.
Well, you only had 11 hours to drive. You know, 11 hours, right, to drive.
Yeah. It is now.
So I remember that truck too. It was a GMC Astro.
Yeah.
And I remember the gear stick, and it didn't have a splitter. It had a high and low range, which means it was probably a 10-speed?
10-speed, yeah.
All right. Was it one of those Super 10s, as they call it?
No, just
So
a
just a
regular
10-speed?
10-speed. Road Ranger 10-speed.
Okay. Yeah. And I remember a couple of times on the road having to stop by Ryder.
It was
So was it a
truck.
Ryder lease?
Yep.
Okay.
Ryder lease.
And I play and do that American Truck Simulator, so I recreate. I bought so that they have this whole network of people that make these mods, they call them, but you can buy like for $50. You can buy like an old truck and then build it in the game. And so I built that truck, same paint scheme and everything, which is kind of cool. So I remember that. Now, how long were you there, and like, where did you go after that?
Let's see. I worked with Cook and Tart for about 3-4 years, something like that. And then I went to work with a guy over at Roseboro, or outside of Roseboro, or Salemburg, Arnold Pope, hauling tobacco. Out of Kentucky. And I worked for him for a while. And
I remember that because I went out with you there. I think you drove a white cab over?
Yep.
Road Commander?
Yep.
He did.
Yeah, those things. I mean, I don't personally think they're ugly, but they called them the Road Commode.
You went
Because everybody thinks you're so ugly. I don't think they're ugly.
you were with me, you were talking about Jake Brake earlier. You were with me one time. We were in, I think it was West Virginia, in a little town. We had stopped, and we were walking down the street, and the buildings were real close. And one street going through downtown there, and it was tall buildings. And we were walking to get us a bite to eat on that street, and it was a downhill grade a little bit, and here come a log truck, I think it was, with just straight pipes. Just about the time we were walking along there, and all of a sudden, and the sound coming off of that,
off the buildings and everything.
The building, it scared me and you. Caught us off guard, But you talking about Jake Brakes. That was one of the things I can remember.
Let me just change. I'm way off script, and I didn't really have a script. I just put a bunch of questions here, but I want to talk to you about how important a Jake brake is to me, and the reason why it's important to me is because it takes me way back to what I loved, and what I loved was trucking. And so over the last few years, I would hear these Jake brakes, and it would just tug at me, and I'm like, man, why am I drawn to this so much? Not only is it a cool sound, and it represents trucking, but it takes me back to those days of me being a kid and being in the cab of the truck, seeing the switch get hit, listening to it. And they weren't all super loud, but it just, when you're in the, you know what a Jake brake sounds like. We used to hear it whenever you would come home at the, we were about a quarter mile from the house to the end of the road, and we knew you would be coming home on a Saturday. We didn't know this was the 80s, so you don't know what time. Oh, I think I'm gonna be home between 2 and 4, whatever the deal was.
Made a phone call, it was on the payphone.
Right, exactly. But you were expecting him in the afternoon, so you'd let us know. So we'd be outside playing, and we would hear the Jake brake, and we knew that when we heard that sound, I didn't know it was a Jake brake back then. I've learned about what it is, but we'd be waiting for you at the ditch. And that's country right there now.
Country.
When you're waiting for you at the ditch, we'd hear that Jake brake because we would be outside in the woods, in the yard, doing something or other. And so now I hear these Jake brakes, and I'm just like, man, I love that sound. And I'll tell you, we talked about how God speaks to you.
Right.
There's a couple of things. Running a business is not easy. It's
no,
not easy at all. Like,
I know it's
that's
not.
just kind of the statement of the century. It's not easy at all. And so there have been these times when I've gone through some rough times, and I just think God has played a Jake break at those opportune times to tell me it's going to be okay. And there's 2 times I'll tell you about. So number one, last September, me and Leanne went to Jamaica. Do you remember that?
I do.
Right? And so, there have been these turning points in this company's history. And one was last year when I decided to change a little bit of a direction of the company into, a different part of trucking, just more of an expanded part of trucking. And when you change a company, the focus, it's hard,
That's right.
And so that was a time whenever it just kind of hit me. I'm like, we're meant for so much more. It's about the time when I started realizing that I really wanted to interview drivers and I really wanted to make everything that we do about the driver because they're so important. And so it was a tough transition. And we went to Jamaica. Mm-hmm. And every morning we would wake up early and we would we were over a water bungalow thing, super nice vacation, but there was a private hot tub out there. And we would get in the hot tub early in the morning. And I bet we heard 100 Jake breaks, as loud as they can be. Because in Jamaica, they get what's left over. So everything's got straight pipes. Everything's an old FLD Freightliner or a cab over or whatever.
Right.
And you would never expect to hear those sounds, on a tropical island. And, when you're going on vacation, you sit and you think a whole lot because, you're not answering phone calls. You don't have meetings. You're not working. So your brain, that's when you get time to think. Mm-hmm. And so I was thinking about all the stuff that's going on in business. And every time I would think about a problem, I'd hear Jake break.
Right. Yeah.
Every time I think about a problem, I'd hear Jake breaking. You cannot make that up. And so I have connected
That's divine
that
intervention.
sound to God telling me, hey, it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And another time is right now. Like we're transitioning more into the direction that I started to in September of last year. And I was sitting here in this conference room last week with Christina. And, things are fine, but, it's hard to run a business. It's hard when you got to think about how to do this and problem solve and everything. And we're trying to really sort through some things. And we sit down here and everything's quiet, just like this. And I heard the loudest, longest Jake break. I've never, and we've been in this building 2 years, and I've been in this conference room weekly. I've never heard a Jake break inside this building at all until last week. And it was just quiet. We're just kind of getting our stuff together, and it was he let it go all the way down until he stopped. I heard it flame out, and it sounded like it was right over there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I see and I hear and I feel that's God talking to me in a way, and he's connected that sound to my happiness.
Yeah. Well, it's, divine intervention. And God uses a lot of different ways to speak to people.
I truly believe it's that for me.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of times where, I've kind of been dealing with stuff and thinking, and then somehow a Jake break would pop up. And you just can't make that up. No. And some people will hear me and think, it's not like I tell everybody that, but they think you're crazy. But I'm not crazy.
No, you're not crazy.
I may act a fool sometimes, but I ain't crazy. Anyway, I got way off topic. So Cook and Tart Steel, that ran its course.
Right.
Arnold Pope.
Mm-hmm. Hall Tobacco.
Then
I worked, after I left Arnold, all this is trucking business. Started driving for David Peterson. We drove teams.
So it was you and him?
Me and David Peterson.
Okay, and he's an owner-operator?
He was the owner-operator.
Okay.
And we worked with Tar Heel Carriers out of Durham. And we hauled cigarettes to California. And that's when my long distance driving got to going. And we run teams out to California or wherever the load was going. California was my first trip with them was Los Angeles, California.
That was a big deal.
That was a really big deal.
I mean, to come out the South or regionally to you're going, I mean, when you think long distance, you think California.
I thought Texas was a long ways. But it's about halfway there. But anyway, I hauled cigarettes with him. And he had to stay home a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, so he told me to take the truck and started. That's when I started driving by myself to California or wherever we needed to go. And I'll tell you this: this is how we had to work, how it worked, the trucking business, how it worked with staying away from home. We left Durham, North Carolina, went to Los Angeles, California, left Los Angeles, come back to Oklahoma City, left Oklahoma City, went to Seattle, Washington, left Seattle, Washington, went to Green Bay, Wisconsin. Never forget this. Left Green Bay, Wisconsin, went back to Seattle. Left Seattle, went to Dallas. Left Dallas, come to Atlanta, and from Atlanta we come home. When we left, that's what we done while we were gone.
Now, how many days was that? Do you know?
That took about 2.5 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks, somewhere along there.
3.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
It took 3 weeks.
It was,
I bet you did remember a lot of the trips.
We did a lot of riding. And when you're doing teams, you have to trust your partner, that he get you there too. And I'll never forget that. We rode. We carried paper products from Oklahoma City to Seattle, Washington. Get to Seattle, we loaded up some more paper products, carried to Green Bay, and done the same thing back to, it's just different names. And we loaded candy bars in Washington going to Dallas. That was a good treat. Did
you get into the cargo a little bit?
Pieces of boxes that maybe got broke, we ended up baby roofs. Oh, it was good.
No, he never told me that. So.
But it was a good experience. I got to see the country. I got to see it now. It's some beautiful countryside in this United States. And people need to get out and see it. They really do.
Well, let's talk about that real quick. What has been your favorite part of the country that you've been driving in over these years?
One of the most beautiful places that I think was from, we left out of Denver, Colorado one time, going to Tacoma, Washington. And that's some pretty beautiful countryside that you see going through Idaho and all like that. It's beautiful. People need to get out and see it.
That really Pacific Northwest, I hear that a lot. I've interviewed probably 12, 13 drivers at this point, something like that. And I consistently hear them say that Colorado to Washington lane, there's something about that Colorado River for a long stretch runs right beside the interstate.
Right.
And, I hear a lot about the western sunsets.
Right.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful countryside out there.
Now, it wasn't always fun loads.
No.
I remember a few things. My next question is going to be, what are some of your favorite loads? Which I think we probably just heard that. But then what have been some of the more difficult loads? And I remember them tobacco sheets, man. Those things would stack high.
Yeah, the tobacco.
Because you would have a flatbed with the walls up, and they would just
walls,
load
yeah.
them all as high as they could
As
go.
high as they could, and then there you would have to get up there and roll out the canvas and roll it out and cover it up.
Them old black rubber straps.
Yeah, there was a lot of straps and a lot of ropes and all. And now most of it is hauled in vans. You know,
Right.
But it looked like bales of hay, square hay, is what it looked like then. And they get it sheeted up and this and that and all. It was tough.
I bet so. Because you had to keep it dry too, because I mean
yeah.
it's tobacco. So
Yeah.
I mean it had to be tarped
Yeah.
real good
Yep.
in order to keep it dry, because then they got to re-cure it or re-dry it or what have you.
this
They
was
probably lost money.
This was in the month of November when in Kentucky it was raining and snowing, and you could be in Lexington, Kentucky, and you go to sleep, and when you get up next morning, be an inch or two of snow on the ground, and And I'll tell you this other experience I had one time going to California. I stopped in Flagstaff, Arizona, to go to sleep at the truck stop, and we left Flagstaff, Arizona that Sunday morning. But when we went to bed Saturday night, it was just cold. When we got up the next morning, there was 4 inches of snow on me.
Oh, wow.
And we left, and we were going to, like I said, we were going to California. It was 20, in the 20s. It might have been 30. When we crossed into Arizona, in the desert, into going to California, when we crossed into the desert, it was 108. So it transferred
Just like that.
from 100. From it was 30 to 108 when we got out there in the desert. I mean, that was in
is
one day.
nuts.
You know, we were high up in the elevation, and it was
Wow.
it was an experience. There's no doubt
I
about it.
bet so. What were you hauling? Do you remember? You said we, so
Cigarette.
so it was with you and David?
No, I was by myself.
Oh, you're by yourself. Okay, yeah.
It's a week.
So the truck, so one of the things I wanted to try to talk about throughout this process is the different trucks. So we talked about you learned how to drive in a white, and then you did the GMC Astro, and then we had the road commode or road commander. That's what they call it. I heard that. I look at it, I'm like, that thing don't look too bad. But then with David, and I remember that because I remember the first time we pulled up, we were driving a Thunder Chicken.
Yeah.
It was old
Yeah.
Carolina Blue.
Yeah.
Carolina Blue.
78
Thunderbird with the doors were about as long as
Heavy.
this. And I remember
Heavy.
one time, you remember whenever you hit the
Thank you, Chris.
at the bank.
Thank you, Chris.
At the bank, the drive-through at the bank, and you clip the side with that big old long door. I remember that. But I remember us going there, and I
Oh, my
remember
goodness.
I remember just like, because, trucking was everything to me as a kid. So I remember seeing this silver Freightliner with burgundy and like purple stripes
yeah.
that came down to a point on each side of the grill. So that was a Freightliner like FLA. Was it an FLA? Do you remember?
I don't
It was
remember.
certainly a Freightliner cab over.
Yeah, it was a double sleeper cab over.
Right. Had a burgundy interior.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember getting up on the doghouse and because we pulled up and I had never seen a truck that nice. So of course, we got to climb
It
in
was
it
very
and everything.
nice. It was.
So how did that drive compare to the Astro? Because the Astro is kind of like old working man's truck. I mean,
It was like between a Pinto and a car.
I bet so. Because that was like, and I'm not a fan of Freightliners.
Compared,
I'm not a fan of Freightliners. I'm looking at them now because I go to some of these truck shows and I see some of the classic trucks and they're beautiful. I'm more of a Kenworth K100 guy, which I'm gonna own one of those at some point. Because I spent more time with Popeye Jim
right.
because he drove regional, and I got to go out with him more times. And it was in that navy blue Kenworth K100.
Right.
So like I spent more time in that than I did in the cab with you. So like that's the truck that I want. But that truck that truck drove well.
It drove well. It was the first air ride truck I ever been in.
So everything up to that was spring suspension.
Loaded, yeah.
And that
spring
thing,
loaded,
did you get that what they call a slap back?
Yeah. But that was the first air ride.
Okay.
Truck.
Do you remember what kind of motor and transmission
Had
and
a
everything?
400 Caterpillar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it had a 3406, something or other like that.
Yeah, it was pretty stout.
I bet so.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Cat no longer makes engines, but like,
Yeah.
I'm a fan of that 3406 series.
Yeah.
Cats. That's what when I get my K100, which I mean, I'm hoping to get one in the next foreseeable future. I mean, I don't have my CDLs. I can drive it. I mean, as long as it's got not for hire on it, I'm good.
Yeah.
And then maybe you'll get to drive that some. But yeah, you had what kind of transmission was in it? Do you remember?
It was
a 13?
13 speed, yeah. It was 13. Road Ranger 13. It was easy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So you drove for, I remember him, it was in Bonnetsville. It was in that area, wasn't it?
What do you call it? On the other side of Star Telephone, and you turn and go that way. What's the name of that?
Kitty Fort.
Kitty Fork.
Kitty Fork.
Fork
It
area.
was in the
So it was
Kitty
over
Fork
there.
area.
I thought it was the Bonnetsville area.
Yeah.
I know that I remember going to Arnold Pope's place quite a bit.
Yeah, well, you
and it
could
was
go
tucked
that
back
way.
into
Yeah.
Salemburg.
Yeah, you could go that way to Arnold's, yeah.
Okay, so you drove for him for a few years,
Yeah.
right?
For a year
And then
or
the
so.
next truck. Now I don't want to jump ahead, but the next truck, because I remember all the trucks. Wait a minute, I think we're leaving one out. You drove an International Transtar. It was white.
That was Arnold's.
Was that Arnold's?
That was Arnold's.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Because I know you also had a white,
Yeah.
because we went out on the white cab over
Yeah.
before too.
He had two. Yeah.
And the thing about that Transtar, because you should drive that home. Thing about that Transtar is I went out with you on the Transtar before too. No power steering,
Yeah.
big old white, massive steering wheel. And I remember you having to back up, and you had to put your knee in the dash and crank it. You remember doing that?
Yeah, that's trucks have come a long ways.
Oh yeah.
But it
So at Arnold, you drove a Transtar,
Right.
Transtar 2. It was like a late 70s model, right?
right. And after David, I drove for what was her name? I can't.
Hilda.
Hilda. And she was in Charlotte.
Charlotte.
And you drove
Had
a K100.
Black, yep, black.
It was a black K100 with, it had that paint scheme where it just kind of came around in the front and the back, and it was black with gray stripes with red pinstriping around
That's
it.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I remember you brought it home the first time. This is what I remember. You brought it home the first time, and the stacks were bent. and I said, "What happened?" You said, "A dummy drove it before." I said, "Do you remember what the guy did to it before?"
I don't remember what he did. Yeah, but that was, and I left David and went to her
Okay.
driving, and we were with the same company, Tar Heel Carriers. I went everywhere with that truck too.
During that time, David was sick too,
Yeah,
and he,
yeah.
he was not
And
doing a lot on the road anymore.
Right.
but yeah,
So you drove that K100.
yep.
Now, what was it like driving the K100 compared to that Freightliner FLA?
I like the K100 better. I really did.
Well, it's kind of when you look at cab over trucks, it's
Yeah.
the most popular
Yeah.
cab over truck of all time.
Right.
It set the tone for all cab over. That came out in '62. It set the tone for cab overs from then on out.
Right. It was a 13 speed also.
Did it have a cat in it?
It had a cat. Yep.
And you know what the horsepower was?
I think it was 400.
Yeah, so just 3406E.
Yeah. It's,
B.
it was pretty stout too. It would run more than 55.
I bet so. I bet so. So then you drove for her for a few years.
Yep.
And I got to spend, I think that's another reason why I want the K100 for my own personal truck at some points, because I got to spend, I was a little older then, so you could trust me to sit in the truck more.
Right.
So you'd let me go out there and sit in the truck. And I remember you used to back it in where you used to park your bus when you drove the bus. You used to
Right.
back it in over there whenever you were home on the weekend. And I
Right.
remember spending hours in that thing
Across the road.
on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
So you drove for Hilda and you were Tar Heel Carriers, same kind of setup, cigarettes, that type thing, paper products.
Yeah.
And how long did you drive there? Was it a couple years? I can't remember.
About a year and a half,
Right.
something like that. A year and a half, and that's when the opening come. It was time for me to get off the road, and the opening come at Prestige, and
Yep.
I went out there to Prestige, and it was on from there.
Yeah, so it was short haul from then on out.
From then on out. Of course, I did have to go to Mississippi with them, and when they
Iowa.
opened up,
You went to
man.
Iowa.
And I had been to every one of Prestige's locations, so to speak, in their state, except Iowa. And before I retired, I made a trip to Iowa with them.
The funny thing, I have to tell you this. This is the way it went down. We were talking one night. This was about 2 weeks before he retired. And he said, I've been everywhere that Prestige has operations but Iowa. And I declare to you, 2 days later, they called him in and asked him, would he go to Iowa for
Asked me
them?
if I'd go to Iowa.
And so
just
he
team
went to
drivers.
Iowa.
Right. So you know who runs that route now? Bobby Powell.
Bobby
Powell.
Bobby Powell.
You
Tim
remember
Johnson,
Oh, yeah, I remember Bobby Powell.
Tim Johnson, I guess Tim's still running it too.
Oh, yeah?
So it's Tim and Bobby.
I know Bobby's got a team driver. And here's the thing about why I know that. Well, Bobby was the first. I grew up with Bobby.
Right.
All from kindergarten all the
yeah.
way up through high school.
Yeah.
And I remember his daddy drove a Peterbilt 352 and he had a heart attack. And do you remember Bobby Sr.?
No, it doesn't. I mean, there's a lot of things I don't remember.
But,
Comes with age.
But me and him used to do the same thing. We used to draw trucks all the time
Yeah.
in class. Both of us get in trouble for it. But he told me, so now his current job is he runs that route to Iowa. He and a team driver. And they have the ag exemption for ELD because they're hauling livestock and they just drive right on through.
Right.
Right.
Him and his team driver.
Right.
And I remember at Prestige when you first started, they took you out on the company airplane.
Yeah, we went to. I took the first 6-wheeler truck van, not van, but little livestock truck to Mississippi. They were starting up their operation down there, and I took it down, stayed in a motel, and Mr. Prestige and the big wheels come down the next day, looking
wheels.
at the building sites and this, and they talk business and everything. And I got to ride back. I had to come back with them on their airplane. There was no place for me to sit except the co-pilot seat.
Really?
I got in the co-pilot seat with the headphones on. We got to going along there, and I looked at the guy and I said, "Hey, man, how about let me drive this thing a little bit?" These are might not better unless you do. But that was the experience. That's the only time I ever flew.
Now, you know the reason why I know that. I didn't know about, I've seen there's a picture that I've seen of you in the
Right.
cockpit that
Right.
you
Cockpit,
have
yeah.
at the house somewhere because I remember seeing it years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
Um,
When I had dark hair.
you did have dark hair.
Before he turned gray.
So I didn't anticipate us going that deep into all the different. I wanted to know those things, but I wanted to ask, like, what was a typical day like out when you're across the country and you wake up in Flagstaff, Arizona? Like, this was the 80s, so
Right.
what was your typical day like?
I'd get up in the morning. I always park where I could get me some breakfast and leave. Drive as much as I can. Stop bathroom break, once in a while. But back then, you done what you could, and as far as you could go, push it to the limit to get there and get back as quick as possible. Might not be legal, but as quick as possible.
You mean faster than 55?
Faster than 55.
You mean driving more than 11 hours?
Driving more than 11 hours.
Do you?
But I mean, I know you said I probably couldn't get in no trouble.
Oh,
with
this is you can. There is nothing you can say that's going to get you in trouble.
I know you.
It's 20 years ago.
But
30 years ago.
30
I would drive as much as I could, as long as I could stand it, and then I'd stop, sleep a few hours, get back up, and do it again.
Well, that brings me to my next question: is how did you manage to stay awake and alert?
A lot of coffee.
This was before energy drinks.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, again, personally, because we do ELD systems. We don't do the systems. We do all the tablets and mounts and all the, you know what we do. I think that the fatalities and the fatigue and all that stuff really kicked in about the time those energy drinks became very popular. Right? Because I remember Bradley, living off of those monsters and all of that stuff. And that wasn't available back then.
No, it wasn't available.
Because the caffeine content in those is way bigger than that of coffee.
Right.
So, that's one of the reasons why, the FMCSA instituted this mandate was because you had drivers living off of 2 hours sleep, living off of monsters and Red Bulls and all that stuff. So this was pre-energy drink movement.
I drank a lot of coffee, a lot of stopping sometimes just to get out and get in. If it's
fresh
getting
air,
cold, get out and walk around the truck. It'll wake you up. And when you know your limit.
Right.
When you get to your limit, you got to stop on the exit.
Right.
You got to stop somewhere and go ahead and take your little nap and everything. But
little power nap.
yeah, you just do what you can do.
You head over the steering wheel.
Yeah, but it is dangerous. It is. It's a dangerous world by someone driving too much.
Right.
And I realize that now. But back then, I done what I could.
Of course.
To get there and get back. Because it was a challenge to me to get a load of cigarettes from Durham, North Carolina to Los Angeles, California. It was a challenge. And I wanted to be up for the challenge. And, it's a challenge today for the drivers to bring a load from Nebraska to Georgia and do it legally and get it there. That's the main thing, because trucks, like you said in the beginning, touches everything that we do, that we have, that we eat, that we drive, that we wear, wherever there's a truck. It might not be an 18-wheeler all the time, but it's a truck somehow.
From the creation of that thing, whatever that is, whether it's this table or the car or the cameras that are recording us or the food that we eat, somewhere along the way, a driver hauled it.
That's right.
Somewhere, whether it's the flour that goes into the bread or the gas that goes into the car or the wood that became the table.
And the driver that does that is sacrificing, as you said earlier, his way from home to get that product there.
I think, really, that it's a calling for some people
Yeah, it's a
Because-
special breed, I do believe.
It
You
is.
know, I ain't saying I'm a special breed, but what I'm saying,
Papa. Well, if y'all don't know, we got Mama and Daddy here, but they got a whole herd of grandchildren, so we call them Papa and Nana.
That's
you
right.
are a special breed. And you know what I do? I was talking with Dave. You met Dave,
Dave, yes.
you know, my new VP of sales, and I'm like, listen, man, sometimes if I don't know the word, I may just say thank. Where do you think I got that from? And I was like, it ain't thing, it's thang. T-H-A-N-G.
but yeah, it is a special breed to be able to do that, and you can go get your CDLs, but some people are just not cut out to do it. You know.
You kind of feel it.
And
Oh, yeah.
And I was around it with her daddy, with Papa Jim, and that, and he told me all the stories, this, that, and the other, and all the cutting up he would do with the other drivers, and we had our CBs. And, that's what we done. We cut up with our CBs, talking back and forth.
Well, so that was
I remember that. I remember you talking on the CBs whenever I was with you.
We do that, and it, like I say, it was a challenge to get from one place to the other, and you'd enjoy it when you have other drivers be able to talk with.
A community.
Yes,
right.
It becomes a community.
Support.
we were.
Support. Yeah.
We were. There was Tar Heel Carriers, like I said. There was 6 or 7 of us in California, and we all got loaded, and we all were coming back to North Carolina, and it was like a convoy all the way back. And we'd all stop at the same places, eat, sleep, and everything. It was a good family knit type, thing.
So I remember, I don't know if this is with Tar Heel Carriers, but this is one of your friends. It was an African-American gentleman, and we were all in a convoy. We were all together, and you let me ride for a leg with him. Do you remember that? And I remember being at a truck stop, and that's where y'all all got together, and there's one of these drivers, his name was Red. And
Was it? It wasn't Deputy Dog, was it?
Deputy
Dog
Dog.
Deputy Dog.
You worked with his sister, Julian. His name was Julian.
Yeah, it was, I remember.
Cooper.
Julian Cooper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a black guy. He was
Yeah.
part of your group.
Yeah.
Now it
Yeah.
wasn't in California.
No.
I don't
It was
remember
up
where
east.
we were, but I
down
know
East
that there
Coast.
was like a couple of hours from one point to another that you let me ride
Right.
with him between
Julian,
all the trucks.
Julian Cooper sounds like it.
And I remember y'all talking back and forth on the CB radio.
Yeah, he was a nut.
So that brings me to my next question. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to pause real quick so he can check the cameras and everything. And then we'll...